Good morning, dear ones, and we are working on day 2 of our gratitude month and blessings. Um, we have the board all set to go for our gratitude. So on Sunday morning, when you come into church, or if you happen to be in any other time, feel free to put your sticky note on the board, and let's see if we can fill up our bulletin board with our blessings and our things that we're giving thanks for this month. So we'll show that sometime later this week. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about Psalm 24 and build a little bit off of All Saints' Day. So, yesterday I was out in our cemetery and I offered a prayer of remembrance so we could give thanks for those who have gone before on All Saints' Day itself. But I was struck by this Psalm 24 that we read on All Saints' Day typically. Um, it's not what you would think of as somebody remembering those who have died or gone before. And there's a reason for that. And there's some background into this insight. So, as an example, and as some insight in that, in the Jewish tradition, they have what is known as a Kaddish, which is a hymn for praising God during the Jewish prayer service. The most popular is the Mourner's Kaddish. And in that Mourner's Kaddish, there is no mention of death. There is not a mention of sorrow, of the vulnerability, of the pain there. The only thing that is mentioned is um, is giving thanks to God. So you praise God for God's greatness. When we are in the midst of things that we cannot understand, part of our grief, part of that time and that period is to part of that mourning is to bear witness to God's greatness. And I think sometimes we forget that. We get so caught up in our grief, we get so caught up in our emotion and our sadness that we forget to give thanks to God for God's greatness. Because let's face it, it's difficult and it's hard to find those blessings. And Psalm 24 is one of those psalms that can help and can guide us into that in our mourning and in our grief. And so the psalm reads, "The earth is the Lord's, and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it. For he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? And who shall stand in his holy place? Those who have clean hands and pure hearts, who do not lift up to their souls to what is false, and do not swear deceitfully. They will receive blessing from the Lord, and vindication from the God of their salvation. Such is the company of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory." So for us, as we celebrated yesterday and gave thanks for those that have gone before us, we are mindful of this territory that is grief and mourning, and it's not a familiar territory for most of us. It's foreign territory, and it has its own rules and its own laws that one only discovers when you traverse that terrain, when you go down that path. It's one of these areas of life where we cannot experience it unless we actually are in the midst of a grieving or mourning in some form. We are usually bone tired. We are just tired and worn out in the midst of our grief and unable to calm our minds and our hearts and to find that rest. And one of the ways that we can be given rest is to let the King of Glory come in, as Psalm 24 says, and allow God into our hearts, even when it is hard to understand what's going on, even when we are in pain, because the truth in this, the truth in mourning, the truth in grief, is that God feels our pain. God is just as vulnerable as we are. Jesus weeps with us when we weep. And so we walk side by side, and if we forget that God is there with us, it's hard to bring God in. But if we allow God in right away in our grief and in our mourning, and we remember that God is just as vulnerable, is just as sad, and is grieving just like us, there is a sense of hope that boils up, that bubbles up inside of us, and can help get us through that shadow of death. Remember Psalm 23, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You know, God brings us through. And so we are reminded in our grief and in our mourning to give thanks to God for God's amazing power and might. And so our second devotion today is just to remember God's power and might in our lives. And where are we finding that? Where are we finding God? Where are we seeing the image of Christ in other people? And are we remembering to give thanks for that? And so have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow or at the next video. Bye bye, friends.